Hi, everyone. So I'm a social scientist. I work at a think tank studying social movements, studying new technologies, studying consumer attitudes and marketing and economics, and really anything that can help us better understand how advocates and social movements can be more effective. So my main research focus is the farmed animal movement, and I'm most often asked by activists in this area, what's the single most important research finding in the field? So what single finding, if taken to heart by activists, could help us become most effective? And that's what I want to speak about. So I love this question because I think the research and the evidence gives us a lot of cause for optimism. So in a book I'm writing, I'm arguing that we're on track to see a 50% reduction in animal farming by 2050 and the end of the industry globally. So it's going to come much sooner in the United States, of course, by the end of the century. So my answer to that question is this. So I believe we need to go beyond Veggie Pride. So we need to go beyond focusing on individual diet change. We need to go beyond portraying ourselves as a quirky, insular subculture. Sure. Sorry about that. So we need to go towards an institutional perspective. So for example, with the term pride, I think we need to move beyond that because it thinks of ourselves as the victims when really we're fighting a much larger struggle. We're not oppressed. I mean, there's some hassles of being vegan. You know, I'm from rural Texas, and of course, there's some difficulties there. But really, we need the focus to be on society-wide change because that's what matters to all of us. It's tackling animal farming as an entire social issue. So concretely, what this can mean is things like in our chants or in our leaflets or in online ads that we're running where we have some sort of call to action at the end of a video, a social media post showing slaughterhouse footage, that sort of thing. We should, instead of saying go vegan or go veg, most of the time we should say something like end animal farming, or America needs to eat less meat, or these sorts of things calling for the country as a whole, our communities as a whole, or the world as a whole to take action. So I want to go through, with the rest of my time, a couple of pieces of evidence for this. But in my book, I go into full detail for all of it. I can obviously only address a little bit of it here. So first, some of you might know that around 5% of US adults self-identify as vegetarian. Even fewer of those people actually follow a vegetarian diet, maybe 1 or 2%, and even fewer actually follow a vegan diet. So I have a question following up from that. How many people do you think would support a ban on slaughterhouses? So if you're like many people I've asked this question to, you'd reason as follows, something like, well, you can't really support a ban on all slaughterhouses unless you're vegetarian because you're eating meat every day. So it must be less than 5%, right? Maybe 1, maybe 2%. Well, that intuition is way off. So in fact, 47% of US adults support a ban on slaughterhouses. And this is awesome. Yeah, this is fantastic news. Okay, sorry, even closer. So this is really fantastic news that so many Americans are supporting something as radical, we would think, as a ban on slaughterhouses. You might have also heard that 32% of US adults say animals should have the same rights as people. These are really radical things. If you're thinking through the lens of individual diet and what people are eating every day, you would never suspect that there's this much support for veganism and for the end of animal farming, but there is. And you might understand this if you think about the way we interact day to day, talking about veganism and trying to convert people to a vegan lifestyle. So you encounter so much defensiveness. It's like the person you're talking to has, a stack of index cards and they're pulling one out every time thinking of a new reason to justify their own consumption, and they'll do that forever. That stack goes on forever. And we're not going to be able to convince people to change their diets one by one. That's just not how social change works. Which leads into the second big piece of evidence, which is that there's virtually no historical precedent for the heavy focus on individual diet change that we have in our movement. It's very hard to find a movement that's even tried, much less succeeded, with a heavy focus on individual diet change. The canonical example is the free produce movement. So in the 19th century, some anti-slavery activists were focusing on abstaining entirely from slave-made goods. And they tried to do this, they tried to get people on board, but they saw that it was really ineffective. So a prominent abolitionist named William Lloyd Garrison tried this. He went to the World Anti-Slavery Convention wearing a free produce coat, much like we would go wearing vegan clothes or eating vegan food. But then 10 years later in 1850, he came back and other abolitionists were saying, no, don't worry about what you're wearing. Focus on changing policy, focus on changing institutions and society as a whole. So really, I think there is a lot of room for optimism if we make the strategic shift, as I think we will, towards institutional change. You know, every day we're seeing things like new vegan foods like the Beyond Burger, Just Mayo, new corporate policies. We're seeing mainstream discussion of really radical topics. Just this morning in the New York Times, there was a discussion of legal personhood for non-human animals. A very serious, you know, positive discussion of that, which is so fantastic. I'm so looking forward to building a vegan world with you. I encourage you to not just adopt a vegan diet, but to work together towards the end of animal farming. Thank you.